Ready.
Awesome.
Action.
June 8th. We're here today. My good friend, Seth Gross. Appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, man, appreciate you having me. Excited to just chat with you a little bit and talk.
Absolutely, man. How are you feeling? Just overall in general right now.
I'm feeling good, man. I had a fun last weekend. Got a cool opportunity, and got to take some time to just enjoy it and enjoy the moment and kind of celebrate a little bit with friends and family, and then turning the page and moving forward to what's next.
Absolutely. And you went out to Stillwater, Oklahoma, correct?
Yep.
Okay. What is it like traveling for competition? As far as your routine and just the struggle of having to take those flights, and I know you ran into some trouble in
Yeah,
Stillwater.
yeah. It depends, right? You can get those ones where it's smooth sailing and you fly in and there's no issues. But as far as routine and stuff, it's something that right you gotta over prepare for trips and traveling and be ready for things to go wrong a little bit. So that's why, right? Like people know, I actually missed my flight. It got canceled to Stillwater. Got stuck for an extra day and didn't get out till 7 p.m. the night before. I was supposed to wrestle at Final X, but right, you prepare for things like that. I made sure I had everything I need in case. I pack wrestling shoes in my carry-on just to make sure my bag gets lost that I'm ready to go regardless. So, right, it makes it harder, right? Making weight when you think you're gonna get a workout in that night, but you don't, and things like that. But you got to be able to, make a new plan if the plan goes a little off. So.
Yeah, were you in the terminal when you found out the flight was delayed, or was it before you got to the airport?
Yeah, so we were on the way there, and then it kept getting, actually, when we got there, it was delayed, and I was like, I actually luckily live pretty close to the airport, so I drove back home. I was like, oh, because it got delayed an hour, I was
Yeah.
like, I'm going to go relax for an hour, and then it's getting closer, heading over, and then boom, delayed again. It's like, all right, I'm going to drive back home, and I was in communication. I was like, if it gets delayed again, there's no way I'm gonna make my layover that I was supposed to hit in Dallas, and that was the only flight from Dallas to Stillwater.
Yo.
So then, if I ended up getting on the flight anyways, I'd be stuck in Dallas overnight, and that's gonna make it even trickier. So it kept getting pushed back, kept getting pushed back. Eventually got canceled. So luckily, ended up getting stuck in not stuck at home in Madison, and then I get on the line with a flight attendant. It's a whole nother story that I haven't told a whole lot of people yet. But I get on there and hours and hours trying to rebook a flight, telling me I can't get to Stillwater, can't get to Tulsa at this time, can't get to Oklahoma City. And finally, she said that she found one seat available on a certain flight, got me
One
on it.
seat.
And so I fly out, to Tulsa the next day. This is something I found out later on, but as she did that, she canceled my entire itinerary and just rebooked a one-way ticket to Tulsa.
No way.
So before I was about to wrestle my second match at Final X, I was like, we had a big break or whatever, and I was just going to check in for my flight.
Yo.
And I go in there, there's no flight home. And I'm like, oh my goodness.
And
So
this is after match one, right?
yeah, after match one, before match two, we had it was like a break from 3 to 7 or 4 to 7, and I was like, oh my gosh, and I'm not gonna get out of Final X until 10, 11, 12. I didn't get out of there till 12. So if I
Yo.
didn't figure it out now, I'm not going home tomorrow. So I called and sat on hold forever, and the lady informed me that whoever switched my flight canceled my flight home and just booked me on a one-way ticket. And I'm like, I got to get home tomorrow, like, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, well, it's full. The flight's full. Like, I don't know if but give me a minute. I'm going to try to figure this out. And she put me on hold. And this was probably at 6-ish. And I'm sitting on hold, and I got to warm up probably 7:30.
Yep.
I'm on hold for an hour and a half, and I have to start warming up. And I'm like, I don't want to lose my spot on hold, but
Don't
I
want
gotta
to lose a
hang
world
up.
team spot.
I don't want to. Yeah. So I was like, I actually ended up handing the phone to Coach Bono, and I was like, hey, if somebody picks this up, like, just come grab me. And I start warming up, and actually halfway through my warm up, he's like, hey, somebody's talking. So I ran over. I was like, and luckily they figured out how to get me back on the flight, and it wasn't a hard conversation. I was just like, hey, we got you. We were able to move you back to the flight that you're supposed to be on, and that was that. But I got back on that flight right before I went out there for that second match. But yeah, it was a interesting travel getting there, and like I said, got in late that night before Final X. Got a workout at 8 p.m. and yeah, but you got to be able to adapt, make things work on the fly, and be ready regardless.
Absolutely. And you're going into, you'd call it the biggest match or series of matches of your life, right?
Yeah, to that point, definitely. That's one of my biggest dreams was always to represent the United States at the highest level. I've been on age level teams, junior level, cadet level,
Yep.
but that's not senior level. Senior level,
It's the big leagues.
that's what we train for, and that's
Yep.
what the goal's been my whole life is to win that senior level gold medal, both at Worlds and Olympics. So
Absolutely. It's going into the biggest match of your life. You're already traveling on the road to the opponent's home arena where he hasn't lost in 4 or 5 plus years or whatever that stat line is. What is your initial thought when you get the flight delayed?
Honestly, I like to. I talked to you a little bit about this, and when things get thrown my way, instead of thinking, why right now, why is this happening, it's like, I look at it as another chance to overcome something and use it as fuel to the
Absolutely.
fire, and use it as it'd be pretty crazy if I went in there after all this adversity and get the job done, and I also think there's always God's plan in it. Maybe there's a reason I wasn't on that flight. Maybe if I would have got that workout in and that night, I would have rolled my ankle.
Yep.
You never know the little things that could have happened or led to. If I maybe that adversity of getting there later and feeling like I had to go through a little bit to get to that match made me a little more motivated.
Yep.
Maybe I wouldn't have had that motivation if I would have been there 2 nights before, sitting in Stillwater for a day, and if everything would have been easy, who knows? Maybe I wouldn't have been as tough. And I got out there and it was just like I finally made it to Stillwater. This is once in a life. I'm not giving up this chance. I'm gonna go get it.
Absolutely. It's like you're already worried about the weight cut, and I know you handled it pretty well this time, but that's obviously a factor. But traveling like that and then having that extra. And I remember even you texting me, you're like, yeah, they messed up delaying my flight. Now I get to sleep in my own bed and I'm coming out fresh tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I know you're playing around, but it's a testament to the mindset of, like you said, spinning it into a positive.
Absolutely, because it's like, right, you got two options, right? You can, why me? Why is this happening at the biggest stage of my life? Why am I having all these complications? Or it can be, it's a blessing in disguise. Now I get to sleep in my own bed. Now I can do this, that. I don't got to sit there all day in Stillwater with nothing to do, right? I have my wife that's cooking me meals now and helping me get ready and right. So I looked at every positive that there was for my flight getting delayed and getting stuck, and right, that's how I, over the last 6-8 months, that's really been something I've been working on. It's just always every situation, if bad things, I had a lot of things go on before World Team Trials leading into that, and it was like, man, this is crazy. This week, why all right now? Why couldn't it happen 2 weeks ago? Why couldn't it happen a month ago? And so it's like, if you don't have the mindset of this is a blessing in disguise that this happened, then right, you're gonna allow those excuses, setbacks, whatever you want to call them, to really hurt your performance.
Absolutely. It's like it kind of give you that edge a little bit.
Yeah, I just think like mentally, and this is something going way back. You remember me and you were cutting some weight for Fargo, and it was the 2012, and it was neither of us thought we were gonna make weight, and we stayed up till 3-4 in the morning losing weight, and finally got down
to our coaches.
And crying to our coaches, talk about how hard, literally, can we please go up a weight, this or that, but right, we fought, we got it done, we kept pushing forward. And I was like, I didn't go through all that now to lose. I didn't go through a whole night, doing this and the training, I've done for my whole life. But in that situation, I used it as fuel. Like, man, I didn't suffer that much to just lose.
Yep.
To roll, or at the very least to roll over easy.
Yep.
Right. And like I said, I think it gave me a little extra push to go out there with a little bit more just effort, not even effort, just a little more like chip on my shoulder.
Yeah. And sometimes even when like things start going wrong like that, it feels like it's just a barrage. It comes not just one little thing going wrong. It's like you said, it's the flight delay and then X, and then Apple Pay music bill comes out at the wrong time. But how do you feel about from even your high school career till now? How do you feel about competing in your home gym or home arena as opposed to on the road?
If I'm there's something special about competing in front of your own people and being able to do it for your crowd and the people that support you, right? And obviously, there's a lot of motivation in that, and it's enjoyable. But for me, I love going into enemy territory, getting the chance to do something like you listen to my World Team Trials interview right after. It was, you don't get a lot of opportunities to go into a world silver medalist arena with the opportunity to take a world team spot in a place that he's never lost a match.
Yep.
Right? And for me, it wasn't like an excuse or, it was a sweet obstacle that I get a chance to overcome. And that's how I immediately, and that's the same thing in my college career. When I went to Carver, it's like, I got a chance to go beat one of the best guys in the country in front of his home crowd. And it gets me a little more excited, a little more up from right. I'm ready to go every time I step out there. But there's something about it that just gives you that energy and like, I could do this, And going into those hostile environments is fun.
Absolutely, and it's just a different dynamic when the whole crowd is going crazy for you the second they announce your name, compared to like you go into Stillwater and it's even getting boos or getting people saying crazy stuff in the crowd.
Yep, yeah, absolutely. I remember, my second match, there was some controversial challenges, this and that. And I remember after I won that match, I was getting, as I walked off, booed pretty bad and stuff like
smiling,
that.
Though. You were
smiling,
yeah,
I was smiling. I was smiling. First of all, I won the match, and second of all, I mean, on top of the fans booing and this and that, nobody thought that in a million years I'd be going into his arena, giving him his first loss there. So it was, like. And I smiled after I lost the first match because I had, deep down inside, I knew I was going to do it, and I really believed that. So it was, I was ready to go, fired up. I think I texted you right after. I was like, I want to do the second match right now.
I wish I could just run it back right now. Absolutely, dude. And let's rewind back to the very beginning. How did you get involved in wrestling?
So I got involved. My dad wrestled a little. In up until high school when he was a kid, and so did his whole family. And he actually had some uncles. Actually, an uncle that was pretty successful. He had won a Big Ten title or 2 Big Ten titles in college, but it kind of ran in his family. And like I said, he didn't try to really make it to the highest level, but he liked wrestling. Liked the principles behind it. Would have taught him, and so I tried out pretty much every sport, but wrestling was one that he was pretty passionate about when he got me into it. And he brought me in. I actually tried out wrestling very, very early at Rosemont, and I liked it. It was something I enjoyed. And then he brought me over to, we got one of the best up and coming programs in Apple Valley at the time.
Yep.
So he brought me. It was right down the road from me. Brought me over to Apple Valley to try practice, and the coach was Rudy James. And
big salute to Rudy James.
Big salute, and I got around that guy, and I immediately fell in love with the sport of wrestling. Just his passion for everybody in the room and how much he cared about each athlete in there. I was obviously a little kid, I have no idea what I'm doing, but he spent hours after practice just, rolling around, sparring with me, messing around, and he was so just, anything to make you want to come back, right? It wasn't ever necessarily about making you the toughest or this or that, right? He made sure to keep us in line, but it was more about creating this environment where he wanted to be there all the time. And I adamantly, like, the second I got home, when can I go to practice again? When can I go see Coach Rudy? When can I go wrestle with this guy? And so that's where it kind of all started. And as my career grew, when you love something, as your career kind of moves forward, there's this point in time where you kind of got to decide, is this something that I'm going to try to pursue at the highest level, or is this something I just want to do for fun? And it got to the point where I got to high school, and I had some success, not super on the national level or anything like that. I had some success at the state level, and I got to high school, and I decided, I love this sport, and I know that it's a whole lot more fun winning than losing.
Yep.
At the end of the day, I love it, and I want to win. And I made that decision, and I quit. Like I said, I did a lot of sports growing up, and that's where I moved completely wrestling year-round.
Yep, and I think just a quick note on Rudy, too, especially his character. If people know Rudy, he's the most humble guy, down to earth, and he's like in a role where it's an often unsung heroes, like the impact youth coaches have in wrestlers' formative years and across all sports. So I think it's cool you're
Absolutely.
still connected with him to this day.
Yeah, and I think like you said, it's something that a lot of people think about, but like they might have the biggest impact on growing the sport of wrestling than anybody,
Yep.
right? They're the ones that are getting new kids in the sport, and they have to teach the foundation. They have to get everybody to fall in love with it, and that's why I love Rudy so much, because he does an amazing job of genuinely making you fall in love with the sport. And so it's cool, and like you said, it's overlooked how important it is to be a youth wrestling coach.
Yep.
If we want wrestling to be one of the most well-known sports in the world, it starts there. It starts at that youth level. So it's like I was blessed to have one of the most amazing youth coaches, and I think that whoever's listening to this, just go ahead and shoot your youth coach a text and let them know you appreciate them, because right, like you said, they're overlooked sometimes.
That's awesome, dude. And so you'd mentioned kind of when you started wrestling, pretty much from the start. I don't know about your beginning first couple years, but you had early success as far as on the local and state level, right?
Yeah. I'd say within a few years of me wrestling at those younger levels, I was winning state titles a lot within Minnesota.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do too well. I think I got maybe placed a couple times with some national stuff, but didn't always do the best when I kind of went to the bigger tournaments, to the Tulsas, to the freestyle nationals, things like that. But yeah, I always did pretty well inside the state.
And when do you feel like you kind of started taking it more serious as a younger wrestler?
Definitely once I got to high school. And I mean, me and you've talked about this a lot, and right, my dad, I think, played a big role.
Yep.
As far as at some point I felt like my dad was a little trying to push me to do more than I wanted to do, and me and him kind of it caused some issues in our relationship as far as outside of wrestling, because he was there at every practice. He always wanted me to stay after forever, and running for 30 minutes after practice when I didn't want to do it, and just pushing me as a kid to do. And I'm saying like pretty young kid, like third, fourth grader, fifth grader, trying to do all this extra stuff, when right, like I said, I just like to be at wrestling, hang out with my friends, screw around, wrestle live, things like that. And I didn't necessarily care to be the best wrestler in the world at the time. It wasn't my goal. It wasn't like, man, I want to go win an Olympic. Obviously I thought it, and it was a dream, but at the time it was like, I just loved wrestling. I loved being around it, and I felt like my dad kind of pushed me to an extent a little harder than I wanted to be pushed as a kid. And so I think there was a lot of times between, I'd say, middle school and my freshman year, where I probably didn't take wrestling too serious because I felt like it was for my dad a little more than for myself, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Right? I felt like I was doing it because he was telling me to do it, not doing it because I necessarily wanted to do it. And then I think eventually he caught on to that him trying to make me do things isn't the best way to motivate somebody. And so I got to high school, and he kind of stepped back and he said, all right, those high school coaches are your coaches.
Yep.
I'm going to be your biggest supporter. And the moment he kind of made that step to just be a dad and be my fan and be my supporter and be somebody that believed in me, that's when I really started making jumps in wrestling. Because now I felt like, okay, well, now what do I want to do? And when I got to think about it myself, that's, like I said, I love wrestling. I want to win it, and I want to do it at the highest level. And when I decided that, then it was easy to stay after practice, do the extra things. It was easy to go on a run at 5 a.m. It was easy to do those extra things that I knew that was going to help me accomplish my goal. But when it was my dad saying, hey, if you want to be the best, you got to go do this, this, and this, I didn't want to do it.
Yep.
And I think a lot of kids are like that, and my dad absolutely wanted what's best for me, and he definitely, the things he was telling me to do probably would have helped me, but at some point, like I said, I needed my dad as a dad and a fan and a believer more than I needed him as a coach. And so that's kind of, I'd say, that turning point where I really started doing well on the national level and started making some noise on that scene.
Yeah, I hear you completely too, and that's another thing I feel like is often misinterpreted, especially wrestling, because you know, there's that tough love aspect, especially from like a dad that's in your corner, but there's also just like psychotic parents, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
who living vicariously through their kids, but the fact your dad was able to kind of make that adjustment and see that for himself because it's a form of love, you know.
yeah,
He's only pushing you because he wants to see you successful and
yeah.
he wants what's best for you.
Absolutely, and right, it's hard to see that when you're
Oh
a
yeah.
little kid, but looking back on that, there's no hard feelings, that my dad was too much, it's I see that he was trying to love me, and he thinks pushing me to succeed was the best thing he could do for me, and it was all, there was never ill intent behind anything he ever did, but right, when you're a kid, that's not necessarily what you need.
Absolutely. And when your dad's the messenger too, and I notice it sometimes too. My dad wasn't a huge wrestling dad, but within wrestling and outside of wrestling, just life overall, there's things as I got older that I would hear from other people where I got the message, and then my dad's in the background like, I've been telling you that your whole life, or I'll even notice it myself to this day where I'm like, dang, that's something my dad was telling me, but in the moment it's like, that's dad.
Yeah, 100. It's funny, actually. Me and my dad were talking about that after Final X this weekend because I've actually changed up my diet a ton. I'm doing some new things, and one of it's a lot of like the liquids I put in my body as far as electrolytes and sodium and this and that, and like a year or so, or my senior year in college, I was having a rough kind of spurt. Um, in my not necessarily I wasn't like losing or something, but I just didn't feel good, and I wasn't feeling good when I went out there. And I was talking to my dad about it, and he was kind of recommended like, hey, what are you putting in your body? And I kind of told him, drinking a gallon of water a day and this and that. And he's like, do you just only drink plain water? And I was like, yeah, I mean, I don't need anything besides plain water, like whatever. And he's like, you should probably get electrolytes. You sweat when you sweat and you're working out and doing
Yep.
this and that. Like, you got to replenish the right way. And I was like, okay, Dad. Rolled the eyes a little bit, like, okay. And then now that's one of the after I decided I wanted to learn the
Yeah.
best way to do it, and turns out that he was right. I need to be putting, if I sweat out 4 pounds, when I put liquids back into me, right, it's got to have sodium, chloride, magnesium, all these things to make my body function at the highest level. And so it was kind of funny when I was telling my dad my new way of doing things. He was like, huh, sounds familiar.
Yo.
And I was like, okay, you might have mentioned that, but
And big shout out to Troy Gross because it's like, through the highs and the lows, it's the fact that he was always present. I
yeah,
think that's the biggest thing there. And speaking on your body and what you put into your body, I know, people look now, they see you 61 kilograms ripped up, they see the Instagram flicks, and it's like some people might not know it wasn't always like that. And in middle school even, I know there were some tougher times between wrestlers and outside friends where, you dealt with some bullying, and
yeah,
people see Seth Gross, world team member, and they don't think of that could be a
yeah,
possibility if you could speak on
absolutely,
that.
absolutely, and right, that's something that I love speaking on this stuff because I know there's kids in the same situation that I was, but I was a pretty chunky little kid, and I had success in wrestling at the same time, but I was chunky, and I had a friend group that, looking back, probably weren't my friends, but I didn't have a lot of friends at the time. Like I said, I lived in Rosemont, and I end up going to Apple Valley, which is down the road, but I don't know anybody when I go to school.
Because
And
they ended up going to Scott Highlands,
yeah,
Rosemount.
exactly. So like after I went to elementary school, I in Rosemont, I made the transition to Falcon Ridge, and I didn't know anybody. And so the friend group that I hung around with, some of just a handful of guys that I knew through wrestling, and like I said, I was chunky, and right, I don't hold anything against those guys, nothing at all, but right, I was kind of the guy that they picked on a little bit in the friend group because I was a little chunkier, and it snowballs when one guy makes fun of you and the other guy wants to poke at you, and right, my nickname was Fat Boy, and then I don't need to go into all the details, but right, as far as that, it was somebody my age, it's not something that's easy to deal with, being picked on by the people that you think are your best friend.
Yep.
At the time I considered them my best friends.
Yep.
And right, so it was tough. And like I said, as I grew and got into ninth grade and started having to make lower weights for wrestling and care about my health a little more, that changed and stuff. But from 6 to the beginning of my freshman year, it was tough dealing with that.
Yep.
You know, it was a daily thing. I didn't want to go to school a lot of days because like I don't want to have to deal with these guys again and this and that. And so it was tough. And one thing that I had through it all, fortunately, was my faith and wrestling. You know, I have my family and a lot of other things, but right, that was two things that I really leaned on at the time. And I think that wrestling is a huge part of how I kind of came out on the other side of all that, and was able to overcome that situation.
Definitely, dude. And it's like you said, you were still having success when you were going through that kind of awkward period physically. And it's like, maybe people are insecure, so they might say something about you because you're kind of the high-level athlete of the group. And I don't know, within wrestling, and it goes across sports and even into life in general, you got the O-linemen, middle school guys who are a little extra. They might give them that big boy type of name, but, you don't know what these kids are dealing with. Mm-hmm. And I think people forget that sometimes is, you got the kids. I was at a point, too, like even probably 4th, 5th grade. I was a little chunky. I had the shirt on at the swimming pool, you know. Yeah. And it's like, it's funny. You make jokes, and most kids aren't going to say anything. But it's like that can really, like, even stick with people when their physique changes and,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, like I said, I went through a very awkward phase with my body and being chubby. And, I felt I would wear 3 T-shirts going to school. I was that kid that was jumping in the pool with the T-shirt on and very, very insecure. I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror, through those ages. And I think, honestly, still to this day, when I'm not in the best shape or in the off season,
that dysphoria.
I look at myself and I'm like, what are you? I got to catch myself and be like, what are you're in great shape, like. It's just crazy that I still can look in the mirror and I know I'm in good shape. I just got my body fat checked the other day, and I'll still be like, man, I gotta work out or I gotta do this and that, because it stems from something that happened to me 15 whatever years ago.
Yeah, and even the last thing on just the bullying subject, we're not name dropping on here or anything, but there were even some older guys we looked up to on the team. I remember vividly there were points where they had their sneak comments and slick comments. And how did you deal with that in the wrestling room going into high school?
Yeah, and it's a hard thing to deal with. And I remember one comment a specific person made that stuck with me for the longest time is there's a situation, whatever, and one of my friends told on this guy because he was picking on him or whatever, and this guy came up to me after. He's like, you know what? You'd actually be pretty cool if you weren't fat.
Ooh, and I know, yeah, I remember that.
And this was a guy that I really looked up to, and I was like, I wanted to be like him. He was always a guy that I want to be that guy, because he obviously he's having some success and this and that, and he's a leader in the room. But then he kind of said that to me, and it was hard to look up to him moving forward. So that was definitely one that stuck with me. And like I said, that's the one thing that be nice to people, man. Be nice to them all the time. You never know what people are dealing with, what people are going through, what little comment can throw somebody off, off the edge. And that it's important, just the way you treat people.
100%, man. And you started to really kind of find your lane in wrestling, your freshman year folk style, and then the big turn, though, everybody knew was that first Fargo title. Can you speak a little bit about what that experience was like going out there and getting that first place plaque?
Yeah, it was unbelievable, and I don't think I developed a ton of confidence. Like I said, I'd never won at the highest level, and this is kind of we hit on this earlier. This is kind of when we had the crazy making weight, getting down to weight, and there was something that just kind of clicked with me that I was like, I've worked too hard, I've done too much to not at least. I got to at least believe in myself and give myself the best shot out there, because a lot of times I'd go out there and back down because that guy's name was Joey McKenna, or that guy's name is Aaron Pico, or that guy's name is whatever it might be. There's too many times where I walked out there and that's going through my head. Oh, there's no way I can beat this guy. He's so good, and things like that, where finally I felt like I turned the corner on that and was like, what is he doing that I'm not doing?
Yep.
Why can't I be that guy? And so when I kind of started saying the right things in my head and boosting my own confidence, I was able to go out there and at least put in the effort and wrestle like I know I can wrestle. And that's when I started winning some of those matches.
Yeah, and even personally speaking, that was always a mental barrier. I felt I never truly broke through. You know, on the national scene, I had some pretty quality wins and stuff like that, but state matches, local matches, all that kind of stuff, I was fully confident, but then I would see this state on the back of the dude's singlet or some big name type dude like that.
Yeah.
But no, I remember Fargo, that first freestyle plaque. Would you say that's where you really found like your niche with freestyle and kind of really fell in love with it?
Yeah, I think that anytime you do well at something, you kind of tend to lean towards it. But freestyle in high school was actually the style that I probably had the majority of my success in, and I think that being able to win as a first-year cadet, that was another big thing at the time. You didn't have a lot of first-year guys winning these national tournaments against the older crew of guys, and I went in there as a first-year cadet and beat those guys. And like I said, it did wonders for my confidence moving forward and just knowing that, hey, I can do this.
And there might be a recency bias. Obviously, you just made the world team for freestyle, but what would you say you preferred freestyle over folk style? Probably the last 5, 6, good majority of years.
Oh man, I still am up in the air on that. I love wrestling, period, and I enjoy it regardless. And I do absolutely love the top and the mat wrestling and folk style. That's something that I still love, getting in the room with our college guys, and just still to this day, I was messing around with some of the guys in the room on just some new stuff, and just the creativity you can have in folk style, I think, is just so fun to, like I said, get in there and invent new moves and try new things and do this and that. And so I love folk style, but with that being said, I love freestyle as well. Yeah. It's a little more of a go type of, you don't have one guy laying on the other, so got to be in a little better shape for it. You got to be smarter. You got to have more. I'd say for freestyle, and one thing I've changed, I got to game plan a lot more. I got to be ready and more disciplined, where folk style I can roll around and do this and get creative, where can't necessarily do that as much in freestyle, which is a cool thing, right? I got to learn to be more disciplined for a 6-minute match.
Yeah, and they've kind of like, they're changing the rules all the time, but I feel like they've designed freestyle to be more kind of action forward, and folk style, you got 7 minutes to kind of figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely, and right, it's cool because at the end of the day, wrestling's wrestling. I love any style of it, but it's cool to have. It almost feels like after college, right? It's a new challenge that I got to figure out how to work my way up there.
Do you feel like your actual in-match like style and just your mental approach to going into matches differs too much from folk style to freestyle?
Not really, right? Obviously, my fundamentals of the areas and things I have to work on are different now that I'm in freestyle, and when I'm drilling, it's more freestyle oriented. But as far as preparing mentally and going out there, I'd say it's almost identical.
Yeah, and I think you specifically too, because it's like when you really got good at freestyle, like that leg defense, stuff like that, it just complemented your folk style game, creating scrambles and things like that.
Yeah.
Most definitely, dude. And so you end up 3-time state champion from Apple Valley, and you're a 2-time Fargo champion after that, correct?
3-time Fargo.
3-time Fargo champion.
Yeah.
Let the record state, 3-time Fargo champion and 3-time state champion. And you're going in as a blue chip recruit into college, right?
Yeah, I'd say pretty good recruit coming out.
And so you took a few visits. Where did you take those visits to?
So I took 4 visits. I took one to the U of M, one to Iowa, one to North Carolina, and one to Oklahoma State.
Okay, and you ended up choosing the University of Iowa,
Yep.
Legendary Brands Brothers.
Yep.
Can you speak on your time at Iowa a little bit as far as just the initial, getting on campus and training with those guys, what that environment was like?
Yeah, it was cool. I went to, and right, I made my decision based on wanting to be the very best wrestler I could be. And when I went to Iowa, that definitely was happening, right? Felt like I was really improving at a high level. The wrestling was great. I had amazing partners, right? Corey Clark, Thomas Gilman, Tony Ramos, Brent Metcalf, right? The list goes on. And right, it's as far as wrestling goes, I couldn't ask for a better training situation, partner situation there. Where the issues came was, me, like I said, making wrestling kind of this pedestal in my life at the time, and not really caring about my mental health, my faith, my things outside of wrestling. And so, like I said, that was on me going into making my college decision. All I cared about was being the best wrestler I could be. And I didn't, like I said, I didn't take the time to, think, is this a place I could see myself living if wrestling wasn't involved? And so, like I said, that reflecting on the decision, obviously I wouldn't change anything for the world, but right, wrestling was too important at the time.
And do you feel like, did you notice that change where maybe, you weren't having success at opens, or maybe coaches in the room were telling you, you could pick it up a little bit, or was that something later down the road where you felt like you weren't focused?
I think that at every level I've kind of been always told that you can't do it. Right? And I was in youth, you're never going to win at the middle school level. I was in middle school, you're never going to see success on the high school level, and every single step of the way.
Not going to be Dayton Fix to make a world team.
And after I beat Dayton Fix, oh great, we're going 0-1 at Worlds this year. And it's like every step of the way, it's been, nobody thought I could do it. And so I got to college, I took losses, this and that, but for me it was just a step in the journey. So I was never worried about losing at opens or this and that. It was always, part of the progress. And even I've never been the phenom to jump out and win something straight out of high school or win something straight out of college. It's always been, I just slowly worked my way up. It's been four years on the senior level circuit, and each year was just a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. And it's just, right, continuing to adjust, continue to evolve until you reach your goals. And it's just the consistent things that you do, right, believing that they're going to pay off. So I would say at the time when I was at Iowa, I wasn't really worried about where my wrestling was headed. I knew that was going to be all right. It was actually, things started going a little bit south when I got injured and I couldn't wrestle.
Yep.
Right, and all of a sudden this thing I went to Iowa for was removed. I can't wrestle. I can't really even work out at the time.
On your hands.
Right, and I didn't set myself up to have a life outside of wrestling, and then wrestling gets stripped away, and that's when things kind of snowballed out of control, downhill, making poor decisions, hanging around situations I shouldn't be hanging around, and everybody knows my story now.
I was gonna say, it's well publicized, but if you don't mind speaking on that for a second.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, things snowballed down, start making poor decisions, and I find myself in a jail cell on St. Patrick's Day after getting drunk at a party, and afterwards going out and taking things from people's vehicles and walking down the street, just being drunk. And the guy actually found in the middle of taking stuff out of one of his vehicles and called the cops, and we got arrested, put in jail, and kicked off the team, and suspended from the team, and a whole lot of trouble.
And the aftermath of kind of that whole situation, because from what I understand, the staff at Iowa kind of picked their guy out of, because it wasn't just you who got in trouble there. It was 2 or 3 other guys, and one of them was at your weight.
There was more people involved, right, that never got in trouble just because we didn't say anything about them. But me and one other guy that happened to be in my weight did get in trouble, and and like I said, I don't want to speak for the coaches, but from my perspective, it felt like, right, after this went down, that they kind of, because I actually got beat by this guy at my weight
at an
open tournament that year. So it felt like, and I was on a full scholarship, and being a coach now, it makes more sense. They start pushing me out, so right, they'd get that full ride scholarship back, and where the other guy wasn't on that money, and so they kind of, through it all, seemed to favor him a little bit, allow him to show up to certain things and talk to him a little bit more, where the second I got in trouble, they kind of said, hey, come talk to us once your court stuff gets taken care of.
Yep.
And so to me, it just felt like that. And, that's a time where I know it's a really hard situation for coaches to deal with, especially something of that level. But, right, at the end of the day, that's when I probably needed somebody the most, right? I needed somebody to talk to, somebody to help me through it.
Yep.
And I didn't feel like I had that. And so that's kind of what led me to, I got to get out of here. I got to go back to my home, be around my support system and figure out what's next.
And would you say that was probably your lowest point after getting suspended from the team, spending the night in that jail cell, and, now you're back where you started after everything you've done, all the effort you put in to get to Iowa. Yeah. It's like now you're starting fresh and didn't really have a plan at that point.
Yeah, and at the time it was definitely right. I put on 40 pounds, got very out of shape, wasn't wrestling, didn't think I was going to wrestle again. So I would say I was at a very low point in my life. And, right, obviously easy to look back on things and say, it happened for a reason, and I'm blessed that it did happen because I am.
Yep.
But right in that moment, I was down and out. Absolutely.
And I know, so you get back to Minnesota, there's no clear plan, and one big thing too is all the people we grew up, not all the people, but people we grew up with, they're all just, all we see on Facebook is your mugshot, and it was almost, it was just so strange because people were treating it like a gotcha moment,
Yeah.
The man of faith is in a jail cell right now.
Yeah.
For stealing.
Exactly, right? I was out there about my faith, and I wasn't living it. I had my faith, I believed in God, but once I got to college and was making my own choices, I wasn't living the lifestyle I should be living. And people were quick to jump on that.
Yep.
So much for God's wrestler, and and I haven't changed that Twitter handle to this day.
And
just
it's
so you guys
not
know.
gonna change.
But I had people saying, I can't believe I went to school with this kid, and
Yep.
this and that, and for a 18-year-old kid to be sitting on the internet after getting all this trouble, hearing it from people, and I beat myself down quite a bit already. It was tough. It was. And my parents ended up taking my phone away and be like, because I was bad, I was sitting there reading things all day, not having a job, not doing this. They kind of took it like, you got to do something, right? You got to be productive. I actually started working a job at Target, and was trying to do something and think about getting back into school.
And of course, your entire family was a huge support system for you at that time. But I know specifically your aunt was pretty instrumental in that dark period, and if you could speak on just how she influenced you.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, right, my whole family was unbelievable through it all, right? They gave me, obviously disappointed, right, when they find out, but they turned the page quick, forgave me, and pushed me to get back on the right path. And yeah, Kelly was huge in that, my aunt. Because that's just one thing that stuck out to me that I kind of felt was a turning point. That I was working one day at Target, and she asked if she could come in during my lunch break, and I was like, yeah, for sure, blah, blah, blah. So we had lunch, whatever, and she kind of just was straight up with me. She's like, what are you doing? And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, what are you doing? Like, what's your plan? And I was like, I don't know, I might get back into one of the community colleges in the area, this and that. She's like, oh, so you don't like wrestling anymore? And I was like, I love wrestling. She's like, so why aren't you wrestling? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, I've tried to talk to a couple schools, and they don't want me, and they say they can't get me in or whatever. And she's like, so you're telling me not a single school in the country wants you to be there? And I was like, I mean, from what I've talked to a couple, I haven't talked to all of them. She's like, well, I think if you love something and you want to do it, you should make put your best foot forward and give it a chance. And I was like, maybe, maybe let's talk about it, and whatever. At the time, I thought about it and thought about what she said a lot, and she ended up kind of sending me a list of every Division I school in the country. She's like, so have you talked to all these schools? And I was like, probably not. And I remember the next weekend we went on vacation, and me, my mom, Kelly, my family, we kind of sat through, and I was sending emails to every coach in the country, like
Literally.
basically seeing, will anybody give me a chance?
Mm-hmm. So who did you end up hearing back from then at that point?
So I heard back from a few places, but after going down the process, there was usually ended up being a no. We can't get you in with what you did. And there was I believe one school super far away, and then South Dakota State, and that's kind of that was probably the easiest conversation. I messaged Coach Bono, and he was like immediately right away email me back. He's like, I know your story. I know about your wrestling career. Come and visit, and we'll talk. And super straightforward. And it's like, all right, you
So his
know.
open arms on his end.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know what that meant as far as, getting in, compliance, this and that, but he was down to talk. And I remember within a couple of days, I was on my way to check out South Dakota State. And I drive down and I go in his office, and the first thing he said was, "Tell me exactly what you did." And it's funny because before I went into this meeting, I was talking to my aunt and my mom, and they're like, "I know that, right, he's going to want to know everything going on, but you can't be talking about your case because it's still a pending court case and this and that." But I remember going in there, and he asked me, and for whatever reason, I felt in my heart that I got to tell this guy.
Yep.
And I told him every detail, more than I probably should have told him, like I said at the time. And he's like, "Okay, thank you. I believe you. I believe that's what happened. I'm never going to ask you about it again. That's behind us." And then he said, "Hey, I've already talked to, who I need to talk to. We can get you into school here if this ends up being the place you want to be." And so it was a pretty cool moment, just that he put it was just, let me know what you did.
Yep.
Now it's behind us.
When it felt like everybody probably kind of turned their back on you at that point.
Yeah, and it just like that. I know you're, and basically, I looked him in the eye when I told him everything, and I said, "You're never gonna have a problem with me again." And that's when he said, "I believe you," and that was that.
You guys both stuck to your word. It's awesome, man. And so you get out to Brookings. Before we talk NCAA action, that's actually where you ended up meeting your wife.
Yep.
And so you don't got to go too deep on here, but how did that go?
Yeah, I mean, she was there before I was. Like, obviously, she grew up in Brookings, South Dakota, and she was actually training in the South Dakota State wrestling room before I even got there, training with Bono and Reeder and the other South Dakota State group. So it was, and when I got there at the time, I didn't really think much of it, but we got to know each other, talk and this and that, and eventually just started hanging out a little bit, and we got to know each other, and it was cool to just have another lady that was kind of on that same journey as me, and it was cool watching her, just how hard she worked, how how just everything she was doing, and it was cool. Like I said, cool that somebody kind of got it, knew what I was going through. I knew what she was going through as far as that stuff, and both had similar goals. So it was a cool situation, and like I said, we started hanging out a little bit, and yeah,
No,
rest is history.
I definitely remember when you first told me about her, and you were serious. You were serious, and you're like, "Dude, I really, really like this girl." And I know you were chasing her for a bit, and finally got that opportunity.
Yeah, it wasn't easy, but it was an amazing journey and worth it, and very blessed to have her.
Absolutely. And so South Dakota State, year one, this is your 141, right?
Yeah, Pirates 141.
Okay, and this is where you kind of start, you're not complete household name out there, but that's where you really start making some noise and kind of becoming that guy. You made the blood round that year?
Well, I mean, honestly, I had a pretty rough freshman year, right? That was me coming down from, like I said, I was out of shape, 170 pounds, right, at first half of the season. I'm pretty sure there was this point in time where the coaches were like, "What did we get ourselves into?" I had a losing record. I remember went to an open, actually, and I got pinned by a JUCO kid and then lost the next round, beat out of the tournament down at Iowa State. And I remember I met up with my dad after that. We grabbed some Subway, and I was like, I don't know if I could do this. Like, I don't know if I'm built for this anymore. I don't know what it is. And he kind of just told me, make it one more day, one more week, one more month, get through the year, and he's, see where it takes you. And he's like, just completely buy in, and if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But at least at least put in the effort. And I did, and kind of turned the corner about winter time that year. And right, like I said, I had a losing record, and in the second half of the year, I end up winning, I want to say 15 out of the 18 matches I wrestled that second half of the year. So I ended up kind of gaining some momentum.
And that you qualified for the NCAAs?
Yep, blood round. Yep.
Okay. Who's that match to in the blood round?
Solomon Chisco from Virginia Tech.
Ooh, definitely an OG.
Yep, beat me up a little bit. Him and Ashnault beat me that year.
Okay. Then you come back the next year, and this is where you make the NCAA finals, right? And
Yo.
start really, your name starts kind of becoming bigger around Brookings, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because they had, even making the blood round in Brookings was a pretty big deal. They never had an All American, right? 0 All Americans, um, and blood round's pretty close. So they were getting excited about wrestling. The team did a little bit better than it had in the past, and so yeah, inside of Brookings, like I said, there's not a ton to do in the area, so the fans they get fired up about their wrestling.
And year two, was the regular season going smooth for you before you made the finals?
Oh, yeah. I actually had a phenomenal year. I made the world team that summer, and I think that really, once again, kind of boosted my confidence. I was finally back in the shape I should be in, and the momentum kind of got rolling. And I lost to Eric Montoya that year, and then I lost in the national finals.
There were only 2 losses that year?
Yep.
Okay. You think about that match with Clark a lot, or not too much?
I used to. It used to be all I thought about. It was something that I still, to this day, think if I wrestled to my potential, I should have won that match. But, he was an Iowa guy, and the whole story and the whole build-up to us wrestling that national finals match was kind of built around me getting in trouble, shot at redemption, and this and that. And I just remember mentally every interview, every person, every text, it was about that. And not that it was rehashing what I went through, but it was hard to get that off my mind and actually focus on wrestling.
Brings up those emotions you had already kind of processed and put away.
Yeah, and it wasn't about, hey, Seth's wrestling great, or he's having a great tournament, or he's on. It was all about, what had happened in my past, and I let that get to me quite a bit. And if you watch my wrestling that year, I never got tired, but I went out there and I was mentally exhausted, and so I got exhausted in the match pretty early on. And I couldn't wrestle, and so yeah, once again, I don't want to take any credit away from Corey Clark, because dude, freaking, he's an
awesome
animal.
Wrestler, yeah.
And he was going through it himself, right? He had a half a shoulder or one shoulder he was working with, and stuff like that. So right, take no credit away from him. He beat me, but I think I made that match, or the stuff leading into that match, I just wasn't in the right headspace.
And that's what's interesting. You always talk about, when athletes go to big tournaments like that, it's like you don't know what people are going through, because everybody's going through something. Even in that match, you said you had the mental exhaustion of just the Iowa, South Dakota State, and it's like Corey Clark's got a physical shoulder, and everybody has some type of mental things going on, whether it's relationships or stuff at home, and trying to compete through that is just something you have to accept before you even go out there.
Yeah, absolutely, and you learn to deal with it, right? That was a huge just lesson, for me. And I learned a lot from losing that match, more than I think I ever would have learned if I won. I learned how to deal with, having these thoughts in your mind, or having these outside stuff going on, and how to, kind of let it all go when I step out there, and learning how to cope with, just getting outside pressures or outside adversity or drama or whatever it might be, and just kind of just let it go and focus on what's right in front of me.
What do you remember about the NCAA title season?
I just remember I was a man on a mission that year, and I had a chip on my shoulder, and I felt amazing. I felt ready to go. And yeah, I felt like I was doing everything right to go win that year, and I challenged myself. I went up, lost to Master Bryce Meredith, but overall it was just an amazing year, and I felt like I had the confidence. I was doing things right. I was eating, sleeping. I think I had things really zoned in at the time, and I had a crazy national tournament, but was able to get it done that year against Michik.
Yeah. And it's like, it always sounds so cliche that, do the right things, work hard, but it's like when it comes to fruition, kind of like when we were speaking about your dad, it's like, dang, what coach was saying was right, or what dad was saying was right the whole time.
Yeah.
Because it's just simple, not easy, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you win that NCAA title against Stefan Michik in the finals. When you got your hand raised there, was that like the pinnacle of your wrestling career? Like, you felt like everything had led to that moment?
Yeah, I think that a lot of it was honestly the biggest thing I felt was relief. which is crazy, right? Yeah, I was happy, I was overjoyed, but I felt relief because a lot of people expected me to do it. A lot of pressure was on me, and it was mine to lose. Is the
Yep.
way I saw it at the time, and so it was a relief, and it was a finally. I felt like like I said, leading into that, I was just so in the zone, that I was probably not communicating with my family and this and that, and just
Yep.
so focused that finally got it done, that I just felt a relief, and then that was in itself was an overjoying feeling, and
Yep.
I got to have my family. It was, I think, one of the first years they brought families down right
I
next to
remember
the
that.
floor,
Yep.
so I got to run down, hug them, hug my now wife, she's girlfriend at the time, but yeah, it was unbelievable.
100%, dude. And it's like you went from the lowest of lows to like the highest point you could get to,
Yeah.
as an amateur athlete. And,
Hmm.
did you feel, because the way I hear you speak about it now, from the bullying or from the people that reacted after you went to jail, like, you forgive them. And I don't know if it's
Absolutely.
because you're that far removed from the situation, but like in my head, I'm thinking, you get that NCAA title, and it's just like, all I'm thinking about is all the people that doubted me, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But
No, it's just why ruin why ruin the moment
yo,
thinking about what people had to say. It was all, and honestly, like I said, there was a time where, right, it sucked to hear that stuff, but everybody, I don't think that, first of all, they don't know me. A lot of the people knew of me. They didn't know me.
yo,
They didn't know how I lived my life, what led to those moments, what I was going through. And so why, what weight does that really hold in my heart? Right? None. At the end of the day, get to know me, and then if you still feel that way, and we know each other, then I'll probably care a little bit and hear you out on what you have to say. But it's coming from people that, at the end of the day, they don't know what I've been through. They don't know my situation. So it was it still is, like, when I hear that stuff, see people on
oh,
Twitter
the
or this and
comments
that, it's
going
like
crazy.
it's easy for me, honestly. And one of the things I actually try to do is actually kill them with a little bit of love. I send a
Yep,
little bit of love their
yep.
way, and say, oh, appreciate, thanks, or whatever, whatever
People
it
don't know how
is.
to react to stuff like that.
Exactly. Somebody says, a jerk comment or something not so nice, you go say something nice back to them, and yeah, their mood changed quickly and stuff. But it's something that, like I said, you just can't let that stuff, weigh you down, because all it'll do is eat at you, and honestly hurt you if you let it kind of sit there.
100%. So we win NCAA title, kind of a top of the world moment, for what that is, and probably almost the mayor of Brookings at that point, and you and who you're now on staff with, Coach Reeder and Coach Bono. You guys, along with the team, you guys were filling up that gym, and you had a
Yeah.
lot of momentum behind you, where that whole city and probably that greater area of South Dakota, North Dakota,
Yeah.
was supporting you. And then your coaches actually decide
Yeah.
to accept a new job at the University of Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
What was your initial reaction? How did you hear about that? Or
Yeah, I mean, it really shocked me. I didn't see it coming. It kind of blindsided me. Right, I just won a national title. I'm on top of the world, feeling pretty good about myself, and then I remember them calling us in and kind of letting us know, hey, we're leaving. And to me, that, at the time, a lot of anger.
yep,
Yeah, I was very upset. I'm going into my senior year, and you're leaving me here. I was your first national, things jumping in my head like that, and
it's not one coach either. It's two
yeah,
two primary.
yeah.
And Readers could easily be a head coach at a lot of places. So
Hmm.
it's like two very influential
So,
people.
so yeah, at the time, it was a hard thing for me to process, because those were my guys. And once again, right, I got over it pretty quick. I kind of turned the page on it quick, because once again, right, what is me feeling this way? These dudes have done more than so much for me,
Yep.
right? They're the guys that gave me a chance when no one else would, right? They helped me get back into shape when I was at my lowest point, right? And so when I sat back and thought, how could they do this? Well, there's a huge opportunity for them
Yep.
going into the Big Ten, the premier, conference in wrestling, probably, at the time I didn't know the numbers, but assuming that they're getting paid a lot more so they can take care of their families better,
Yep.
right? And who am I to be upset that they're, taking a jump to advance their careers, making their families' lives better, Yeah, and once I looked at it that way, it wasn't that hard to be like, all right, makes sense.
Yeah. I feel like that perspective is like comes with maturity. I
Mm-hmm.
notice like, even outside of wrestling, sometimes in life, I'll catch myself just asking why would someone do this, or why would they go do this instead of, and you gotta like step back and remove yourself and be like,
Yeah.
this isn't about me all the time.
Well, and right, we're humans, we're very emotional people, and so
Yep.
when you're saying the original stuff, that's all stemming from the way you feel,
Yep.
right? When you can take a step back, like you said, right, I can rationally start thinking about why somebody did what they did. But right in the moment, you make it so much about you, and then the emotions come pouring in, and that's the why me, starts coming in your mind. Why would they do that? When, right? Honestly, like I said, when you can remove your emotions from it and start thinking about the actual reasons behind things, it's a little easier to process.
Was transferring like an immediate thought on your mind after you got that news, or was that something that maybe came over the summer, over the off season?
No, like that was zero because I had 1 year left and I couldn't transfer because I already transferred from Iowa. So there was
Ooh,
no,
I forgot
right,
about
if I
that.
transferred, I couldn't wrestle that year and my eligibility was up. And so the plan was, I know when Bono left, there was mention, hey, we'd love to have you in the RTC and train in Wisconsin after or something like that. But there was never any thought of, hey, I'm going to go to Wisconsin. So, and then that was kind of the year that led, like I said, I actually wrestled my first match that year, and it ended up being my only match of the year.
Yeah.
Right, it was that first match, and so um, I ended up having a back injury that was pretty severe that led me to have a spinal fusion and couldn't wrestle. And so, and the rule was right if you graduate, and I didn't even know this at the time. Right, if you graduate, you can have a graduate transfer, and you can do whatever you want. And so, I kind of just want to look at my options. When I found out that, and a big thing that was going through. I didn't know if I ever wanted to wrestle college again after having back surgery because it was the worst pain,
Oof.
and worst recovery process, that I ever. Obviously, I've had a few injuries, but man, it was hard to even imagine myself wrestling again at the 3 months after that surgery.
Just doing day-to-day things, you were getting stressed out.
Yeah, even a year later, I was still in my head. It was like you're never gonna be the same.
Yeah.
And so that was a whole battle within itself. Was figuring out how to get rid of these lies inside my head that I'll never be the same.
Yeah.
That and this is one thing that stuck with me for a long time. But I know I'm kind of fast forwarding a little bit. But I went from South Dakota State and end up at Wisconsin, and when I got to Wisconsin, they had one of the best back specialists in the world.
Okay.
And I'd already had my surgery, this and that, and I was like, I should probably go see this guy if they have him here as a resource. And I go meet this back specialist, and he said, the first thing he said, he looked at my x-rays or whatever, he's like, interesting that they did the surgery like that. I probably wouldn't have done it that way. And so I'm sitting there
This
like,
smells like a lawsuit.
I'm sitting there like, what do you mean? He wouldn't have done it that way. And in because they went in through my stomach and they went through my back, and he was like, I would have just went through your back. I was like, oh well, that's good to know that somebody that's supposed to be the best back guy in the world would have done that, whatever. But he's like, but with that being said, it looks like it's all good. You shouldn't have any issues. It's healed up. And then he kind of threw in at the end, but we don't typically see people perform at a high level after a surgery like this.
Ooh.
And I remember sitting there like, the doctors that I talked to before were like, oh, you're going to be all right, blah, blah, blah. It's going to be better off for you, this and that. And he's like, you're going to be fine doing your day. The doctor I'm meeting with now is saying, you're going to be fine doing your day-to-day stuff, but I wouldn't expect basically to ever compete at a high level again. And I was like,
just casual.
He's like, what? That I did this so I could compete at a high level again, and now you're telling me telling me otherwise. So that was one thing that over the last even year or two has been something that still creeps into my mind when when I lose a match or I don't feel good. The excuse of it's you had a spinal fusion. To give yourself
Yeah.
it's all right that you lost, or it's hard for you to do what you used to do, and that's a lie that creeps into my head that I had to learn to get rid of that. Like, I'm gonna be the best version of me, and I'm gonna be better than before the back spinal fusion.
It's like a doctor kind of being the one to tell you, you know, where the dream ends. It's like the Booby Miles Friday Night Lights, where they wouldn't let my dude play.
Yeah.
But it seems like the reoccurring pattern is, as far as your career goes, and even some stuff with your life, is it's a few steps ahead, and then you get these obstacles placed in front of you, and it kind of it leads into that 2020 season. You're having a solid year, get third at Big Tens.
Yep.
And then you're supposed to go cap off your career in your hometown, home state, Minneapolis, Minnesota. And of course, as we all know, the pandemic hits, and the NCAA is just canceled. It's not rescheduled. It's completely canceled.
Yeah.
And how hard was that to accept for you?
To be 100% honest, and I said this right after, it didn't hit me really that bad compared to the first thing that I felt was for a lot of other people.
Yep.
I immediately jumped to the guys that this could be their first year at All-American or get their first national title or this or that, because at the end of the day, I achieved my goal that I wanted to in college. And there was a time where I didn't think I was going to come back for that final year. So
Yep.
when they stripped it away, it was something I was already willing to not have happen. So it wasn't a tough pill for me to swallow. I'd say obviously I wanted to do it. I was ready to do it, but it wasn't the end of the world for me. Like I said, I just felt for the seniors on my team that never All-American, the guys that had chances to make history at that national tournament and do things. And one bummer was they could have been 3 Apple Valley guys wrestling for a national title that season. So that would in Minneapolis, in Minneapolis, right by our homes. I think it would have been amazing, but it wasn't the end of the world for me. It was turning the page and looking at the Olympics coming up. So that was the mindset.
We lead into the senior team after that. And it's like, I think, of course, it would have been a bit more difficult if you hadn't captured that national title at South Dakota State, where it's like,
absolutely.
now it seems like it's eluding you.
Yeah.
And so you get to the senior level, you start making some noise with the Bill Farrell, and you get on staff, actually, at the University of Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And what was it like going from athlete to now you're still an athlete, but you're also a coach?
It's interesting. It's different, and I think it's helped me in a lot of ways, honestly, as far as I've never been a film guy. I've never been a, guy that, I don't know, really takes his time to break things down as much as I should. I was always just get out and learn.
Yep.
And so it's been cool to sit back and be able to, analyze a little bit more. I think that's helped my wrestling tremendously. And then, being able to break down how a guy can beat it, how can Eric Barnett go beat this guy, or how can Joe Zargo go beat him, being able to break that stuff down is fun. And then I think so that being able to do that and analyze things a little bit differently now as a coach has helped me as an athlete. And then on top of that, coaching it's unbelievable, seeing the work that these guys, it's amazing, heartbreaking at times, all the emotions you could ever think of, but being in the trenches with these guys, because like I said, it's unique because I'm actually still training, so I'm in the trenches with these guys, and then I get to go be in their corner while they try to achieve their biggest goals. And so it's cool. And like I said, it can be heartbreaking when they fall short, because I know what they've been through. I've known they've been doing the right things, and it feels just as amazing as when I win, as it does when I see, honestly, probably more amazing at times when I get to see, Eric Barnett get his first All-American, when I get to see DJ as a true freshman go out there and do what he, that feeling is amazing, because, I felt like, as a coach, you help these guys achieve their goals.
100%. It's like, it's also, there's a whole nother dynamic. The fact that, like, some of these guys are only 2, 3 years younger than you, you know,
Yo,
and you have to step into that coach's role. But you know, I went out to Wisconsin. I got to see you in that element, and I could tell those guys got a ton of respect for you.
yeah, yeah. No, and right, and it's been cool because I think as a team, this has been one of the closest groups I've ever been a part of. You know, the athletes really get along, mesh well with one another, and when you get that right, it's easy to go to war for one another. So it's cool what's going on in Madison.
That's awesome, man. Let's you know, everybody wants to know. Let's talk about the road to Final X a little bit, and you know, making this world team. You took tough. I don't know if it was one loss or two losses when you had Mega Ludus. I think it was U.S. Open.
Yep.
And how did you bounce back? You know, knowing you're gonna have to go see that guy in Iowa again, and you got to win the challenge tournament before even getting to the series.
Yeah, I mean, right. Honestly, you know, I've talked to you about it, right? There was a point in this year, early this year, where I didn't know if I was gonna give the senior level a shot. You know, there was a lot of uh, injuries and things that I was dealing with, and decisions on if I was gonna go 65, 61, and I was, you know, 6, 7, 8 months ago, kind of not knowing what I wanted to do. And so leading into the senior level this year, I'd asked myself what I really wanted, and I kind of convinced myself like, hey, you know, give it a shot this year, and you know, go try out 65, because right, it's easy when you're not cutting weight, losing weight. You can keep your body a little healthier, and so I went up to 65 and I wrestled. Right, lost to Evan Henderson in a crazy match.
Yep.
Then I went and won the Bill Farrell up at 65 kg. And you know, I've talked to you about, you know, I've switched up my diet a ton, and I really started diving into. I came across a pretty good resource called Win, by Dr. James Nicolantonio, and this book has helped me tremendously as far as taking care of my body. And so I started doing that a little while back. Just you know, I made, like I said, I made the decision, hey, I'm gonna go for it this year. And with that decision, I decided, how can I make my body feel the best it can? How can I do every little step to ensure that I give myself the best chance to win? And I came across a new diet, a new way of training, a new way of doing things that I committed myself 100% to. And I think that this diet has really took a lot of inflammation out of my body, made me stronger than I've ever been. And so it kind of built in a lot of things that once I wrestled 65 at the Bill Farrell, I remember coming back the next day and I was 140 pounds, and you know,
Felt good.
felt the best I'd ever felt. And I was like, man, I'm gonna go do this. You know, I'm gonna go do this. This is my year. And yeah, it was like you said, going into the U.S. Open, honestly, thinking I'm gonna smash everyone. Like, I can do this. This is my time. And then I go in there and I take a loss.
Yeah.
And
That was the finals?
no, I lost in the semis, and then I ended up forfeiting out of that tournament just because, like I said, I had a couple things going on that I was already qualified for the World Team Trials, and there was no benefit of finishing up. So that was kind of the right. So I was like, I'm not gonna wrestle back. Right, I don't want to hurt myself, not be able to wrestle at the trials. So then right, I actually came out of that tournament though feeling pretty confident. Right, I've always throughout my career, it's been you know, I wrestle a guy, I feel him out, I know what I got to do. And so I wrestled Nico at the U.S. Open and kind of felt his game plan, kind of felt the things where he was beating me, why he won that match, and had a game plan for the next one. And so I knew I was going to see him again at the World Team Trials, and I did, and it was a little bit different that time.
Stuck him.
Yep. So that's been something that, you know, I've always been a pretty like almost a little coach inside my head, that the second things are happening, I'm coaching myself, like telling me. So the second I walked off that match with Nico the first time, I already was
Game
already thinking about like, hey, this is how I'm gonna beat this guy next time. And so that's kind of going on in my head when it did that, and yeah.
Absolutely, dude. Well, we'll end it with the Final X recap, but you win the challenge tournament to make it to a best 2 out of 3 series for the world team spot.
Hmm.
You know, they're directing you to go into Stillwater, Oklahoma against the returning world silver medalist
Yeah.
who hasn't lost in his home arena. What are your thoughts going into a hostile environment like that?
Like I said, like lucky for the opportunity to get a chance to do something that most people don't think is possible.
Yep.
It was never. I never hoped it was. I didn't hope I wrestled in New York instead of the Stillwater. I'm glad I got the chance to go into this guy's home arena and do that and do the unthinkable.
And
You
take it
know,
from them.
and so that was it was right away. That was the way I thought. Coming off the mat when I won the world team trials, it's like, all right, next challenge, and so that was always kind of the mindset going in.
Yeah, and I had seen a poll online they did where they had the option to pick you or Fix for the winner, and it was 92% had Dayton Fix picked and 8% for you.
Yeah.
What did it feel like, not only going down that first match, but rallying two back straight and really you break through to make that world team?
Yeah, and honestly, I think what that shows you is that it does not matter what a single other person thinks if you can believe in yourself. Right, and I know I got a God that believes in me, that's behind me. I got a family that believes in me and behind me. But it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. As long as you think you can do it, you at least got a shot. And so I knew I could do it. And going down in match one was whatever, because the way that match went, the way his body language was,
Yep.
every little thing to it. I went out coming off the mat after match one more confident than I was pretty confident going in, but even more confident after that match that you didn't just trick yourself into thinking you can do it. You could really do it.
It's so dope, dude. And now you're looking at being on a world team with guys, some guys like Jordan Burroughs, who some people call the GOAT of the sport, and you're headed to Serbia, correct?
Yep, headed to Serbia. Yep, actually going to Tunisia and then Serbia later for Worlds.
And that'll be September or November?
September.
Awesome, man. What is your approach for training, leading up to Worlds? Are you going to kind of keep everything the same or anything go different?
Yeah, one thing, I'm always open for. I'm going to continue to try to learn and continue to try to find the very best ways to train. And, right now I'll keep doing what I've been doing. But if I find something that, is a better way to train, I'll adapt to that. But, this month it's a little more strength training, running, technical things than really just getting in the room and going, live and stuff like that. So it's a little bit more laid back this month, and then we'll kind of start revving up into that first ranking series event, and then once again back down after that, and then once Worlds get closer, start revving it up again.
Awesome, and I think that's a huge message even for the next generation of wrestlers. You spoke on it a little bit earlier, but you treat yourself, you're a professional athlete, right?
Yeah.
And the earlier you do that, the better, as far as taking care of your body, making the right decisions off the mat, and just how pivotal that is to success.
Yeah, and that's one thing I've been trying to preach to my guys a lot recently, is that right, it's got, yeah. And right, I think I brought this up earlier, but there's a lot of lies that you tell yourself, right? I could stay up late and win.
Yeah.
I can eat a Snickers bar and win. I can go drink and party in the off season and win when the time comes, right? And you convince yourself that you can do these things, but I'm telling you, maybe you can, but not a lot of people are that blessed that they can do those things, right? You need to be 100% in all the time, and when you can stop telling yourself those lies and really believe that what I'm eating in my body today is going to affect me 4 months from now when I'm wrestling at the World Championships, right? That's when you're going to really make those jumps, right? Because like I said, it's easy to tell yourself lies. I can eat a bag of potato chips today, right? That's not going to hurt me, right? Once you can start removing that stuff and doing the things right in every area of your life,
Yep.
right, where you can go is endless, right? The sky's the limit.
Man, it's been so awesome talking to you, obviously.
Yeah.
We speak off the record all the time, but every time it's just seamless, dude. And I admire the fact, like I said, it's a reoccurring pattern. Every time you get an obstacle put in front of you, instead of turning your back, running away, pointing the finger, you know.
Yeah.
You put it on yourself. You take accountability and ownership, and I think a lot of people could learn from that, dude.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's always good talking to you, man.
Of course. You have any final thoughts or any message you want to put out there, man?
Not too much. Just thankful for all the amazing people in my life. Extra shout out to my wife.
Big shout out to Rana Gross.
So much that went into getting me ready and just being my biggest support system and just being there through everything. And there's a million people that I could thank. Another one, Eric Barnett and Joe Zargo.
Absolutely.
2 guys that were very selfless and stuck around to make sure I had what I need as far as training. So just a couple shout outs to those guys. Obviously my family is always in my corner supporting. I got you here, but those are a couple special shout outs there. But once again, thanks for having me and chatting today.
Of course, brother. Man, huge shout out to Minnehaha Recording Studio and our engineer Mason for being on the soundboard today. Malik Mitchell and Tygan Kennedy from Black Crane Productions for filming and producing for us. Huge shout out to Rana Gross and our team at Lovenetwork for helping put this together, man. It's been awesome talking to you.